Share screen. So we are going to use Windows 10 VM. I'm going to go ahead and boot that, but you can simply open up VirtualBox. After you copy the folder onto your desktop, you just click Add. And then go to your desktop. Here is my folder. Open it. And then we click on the VirtualBox file. We need to check the settings. I normally try to give it a little bit more. Right, RAM 8000 is okay, and 4-core is good. You know that the new OS is you need to have 4-core or better just to keep it moving smoothly. So after you have done that, you can start and then log in. Yeah, disregard this. I forgot to change it. Use everything on the virtual machine because you're going to run into things later. Problems if you use there. So let me fix this. So on Windows 10. Say login, which we did. Okay, so we're on the Windows 10 once it boots. A little slow for me. We're going to open up Performance Monitor, and then you are going to expand it and use the monitoring tools. You're going to select the Performance Monitor, and you're going to add. So these are the counters that you're going to add, okay? And in that, you would have the subcategory. So for example, it will also look at other things like this. So I'm simply looking at your system health, right? By adding this memory processor or process and processor. Why is this important? Because sometimes we might have malicious files or malware that would utilize a lot of the process. And then also our storage. You can also use it for network purposes like TCP/IP performance diagnostic. You can also use it to check net log on. Okay. And then packet filter. There are other things on the list, but we're only going to use these. Okay, so here I am on the VM. The next step, step 2, search for Performance Monitor. And you can run it as the administrator. Ideally, you can use this role to configure. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Okay. So here, just click on. Now, if you get to this level, so it normally expands this out. The older version doesn't. So you have this, and then you just click the green plus sign. And I have put it based on it's alphabetized mostly except for these two kind of. Okay, so we're going to, let me put this up and then let me put my virtual machine down and pull this up a little bit so we can see the counter. So why do we need to set the counter? We are going to include them, everything that you need on the report and the graph. We're going to add the statistic by adding the counter. Right? We are examining this current system, the virtual machine itself. On the server, you would see something similar to this. It does have network, it does have performance monitor, and you can use it. So we're going to scroll up and we're going to add the logical disk. So once you select it, you can simply select it and then click add to the right. and it's gonna put it onto the added counters, and you start to see your graph change a little bit. Okay. And then I can move down to memory, and then I would click add. See. And then the next one is process. So go down the list. And then I would do, we're going to come back to some of these. Is it processor first? Yeah, processor. We're going to add and then process. And then we're going to go down to TCP. Performance diagnostic. Add. Then come back up to net logon. And then we can do packet direct receive filter. And then last one is peer name resolution. You can also add other things as you need, right? This is just a practice, so to show you. And then click OK. So you're gonna see the graph change like this once you hit OK. It's gonna overlap. That can be a lot. So I just need you to screenshot this, but it's gonna start listing all the counter and the sub-counter information below, right? So on the bottom, you should see the page fault information. So you can scroll down. So it asks you here, what is the page fault set for memory? So go to the bottom part. So there you go. You can find the page fault, or that's page. There it is. So scroll down a little bit and you will find it. So if you click on it, right, you can see that, and it tells you the color code. And then we can go to the percentage processor. Because the beginning is the disk. So processor is going to be a little bit down because we add it later. Percentage processor time right there. So you see the values. And then we can go to cache byte. So as you see, you can find some of this information as you already added the counter, right? So click on it. Now, if I want to change the graph, I can hover over this, and you should see it's right to the left of the plus sign. So you can change it to bar graph, different type of graph, but you can choose the option. So they have the histogram, the line, and then the report, right? Like that is the line and the histogram. So this is a little bit easier to view if you have a lot of counters. Okay. And then it tells you to click on standby reserve byte. Bless you. You can also do view log data, right? And then generate the log, but we'll come back to the report. When you look at the report, this also gives you a live report. So if you don't want to scroll down and find the information, just click the drop down and select report, and you would see it like this. Okay. But if you wanted to view it in the graph, like the histogram, you have to find where that is. Okay. And then select it. Yeah.
For the question with what is member, are we like reporting what the full number is? Or max?
You can, yeah.
Oh, max.
Max value. So if you click on standby reserve bytes, just put down the maximum value and then take a screen capture. And then we can also click on the counter to sort it by name, right? And then we can scroll down. So it's not in the category. So standby reserve bytes is here. And when you click on it, it changes the value up here. So your maximum, you know, it's up and down. So if it's stable, you can give, yeah, maximum value. Remember that this is byte size, so the number is a lot larger because if you're dealing with megabytes or gigabytes or even terabytes, right, this is a larger number.
First question after the screenshot, doesn't ask us specifically for an average or maximum. Should we say one on a specific?
Which one?
What is the page blocks per second?
For page fault? This one?
Yes.
Yeah, put the average. Yeah. For when you do measurement for analysis, a lot of the time you would do the mean or the average, right? So yeah, just put the, because that would be closer to your actual data.
Thank you.
Yeah, I should be more clear. I'll change that and re-upload it. Okay, any questions? Are we okay with this? So now you know how to use a little bit of performance monitor in Windows. So then we're going to click on data collection. So as you do this, right, we want to be able to get a data set or something out of it. So you're going to click on this and we are going to define it. Oops. So once we click this, you are going to select user define, and then you're going to make a new data collector set. So come back here, go to user define, and then right click, you can do new data collector set. You can also click on it and go to action, new data collector set. So if you right click new data collector set, or you can click on action, new, but you have to select it, right? So I'm going to right click new data collector set. And we'll just put in our class name, CIS41A. What did I have you put down? Lab 10. So normally here we want to put the system information, you know, like your system name. And then you just use the recommended template. So I have you just use the click next. So that's selected by default. And then it tells you to do system performance. So we're gonna do this. But if you want to do the other diagnostic tool, then you can, right? Go next. So here's your root directory. This is where it's gonna be saved to. So this is needed for your next question. It asks you the root directory. And once I have that, I will finish. Now, through the application, you'll be able to view the report. But in the case if you need to find it, this root directory is where you through the application directory. Okay. So once you click finish, this is going to show up, the one that you just defined. And it's going to tell you some NT-kernel information and then your performance counter on the right side. Okay. It doesn't activate until you right click and you click start, or you select it and you click start, the play button. So you can do it either way. You can click the play button or you can right click and then click start. So it's going to update, it's going to collect the data now for a few minutes. Okay. So wait a few minutes. Sometime, if it would also time out, but here we're going to wait a few minutes. And then once you have it, you are going to be able to see your report information. So by default, it's going to put in the host name. And that's tied to your system performance report. Okay. So any question? See, notice how it's finished now, right? I just have to wait a few minutes. I don't have to stop it. But if you need to stop it, you can. Okay, so once that's completed, I'm going to expand the report under user define this exists. If you don't define it here, you won't have it in the report option. Okay. So you have to define that here in order to find it here. Get it? Because we have to collect data to have information on that data. So in the next step, it tells you to click on the report, find the report that it's generated. We're going to click on the host name and look at the system performance information. So you're going to expand this. This is your host name, right? And here is the report information. So we're going to screenshot this. It puts a timestamp on when the report was generated and all the counters that you have selected. Okay. So it does a lot of the heavy lifting already. We just need to interpret the data or clean up the data and interpret it. So take a screenshot. And then because we barely ever use anything on this system except for running perfmon, right? So your usage is going to be low. Okay. So here's your CPU for your process. So you are going to look into the utilization.
Right?
Mm-hmm. I should be more clear about that. CPU. I forgot to type it probably. Okay, so for 20B, we're going to look at CPU utilization, and then 20C, we're going to look at memory utilization. So CPU utilization for me, it should be roughly like less than 20% for most parts, because we didn't run anything crazy. Now, in the server environment, this, if you have a lot of services and things going, this can be high. Also, it could, if you're under attack, that could be also high. Here's your memory. All right. So answer those questions. And then you are going to expand the CPU, or you're going to click on the CPU, and then you're going to look at the process for that. So what did I say? On the right pane, click CPU, and then the process of the CPU. So we're going to expand this. So here it tells you all the processes, right? All the process information and some statistic information for the image. So we are going to look at threads information, kernel CPU percentage. Here's your thread count. I misspelled kernel. And then it also lists your sub-process for the certain exe or executable. So as you move along, you're going to see some information like, so here's the processor that we added, user time interrupts. Here, there's your service, right? So you're just going to keep expanding and finding information. So why do we care about recording all of this? Because it's relating to your system performance level, also availability. Okay, so once we look at the CPU and the process information, you're going to go down and expand the services. So you notice that mostly it's SVC host exe is running, right? There's some like trusted installer, security health service. So you can list some of those. WMI app service exe. And then for the stopped, I think there was one that we saw. Yeah, the stop service is down at the bottom. So you see, if you expand, right, it tells you right here for the stop services. Okay. Easy? Any question? We okay? Okay, so we need to check what services are running, what services have been stopped. And you don't have to list all of them, but you know, realistically, we need to identify them. But look and type them down. And then on the system, we're going to look at the information for file data operations and processes.
Is 22 service or services? Because of service once service without the S at the end are a bit more readable.
Yeah. So your service is all the main service, right? Yeah. So you would I guess you can use that, but services, it's gonna give you the breakdown
Everything.
of everything. all the executable that's using. So for malicious, like file and malware or things that are running, you can check here as well, right? Process and services. But for the running and stop use services, it has two sections, the running and then the stop section on the bottom. Then we look at the system. So here it tells you registry quota information, right? The file read and operations is right there. So that means that the file has been accessed for view purposes. It could be system file or other things, right? So system-based file. And then for the processes, you have the mean. So this is just a snapshot of the system health or performance in time, right? If you do this while you're running other things, that could change. I just want to show you where you can find some information that will be useful for analysis. And then you would want to look at the system uptime. This is very important for availability for server systems. And then the threads is going to tie to core, your processor performance. And the things that we have looked at previously. So there's a correlation there. And then I didn't make you look at server, but there, because this is not a server system, but Performance Monitor does work with server. So if you're running server, this is where you can go in and look. Okay. And then if we want to check network, then we can get into some of the sub area like TCP, IP, UDP. So for the network section, which is the next question here, you're going to look at your bandwidth. So on Windows system, I should have shrunk all of those, but we can expand this. So it tells you all the connection, especially for TCP, because it does a three-way handshake, right? It says, hey, I'm connecting. Are you connecting? And then it says, okay, I'm ready. Can let's connect. And then it does a synchronization. So you do have information about how there is communication or connections, right? But we didn't establish much on this system. So if you access web or connect to additional services over the web, it also updates this. Okay. So we can see connection failures, connection active. I try to highlight some of the questions that will be useful for you for analysis, like bandwidth, packet per second for the rate. And then you can get into more of like the permanent storage, like your disk. How many files? These are considered hot files. So you do see a lot of log base, right? ETL, these are the Windows event viewer log type of file. You see our performance monitor stuff comes up right here. That's the one that we created. And then you have file write, like the rate of the file write to disk, and then the value for this bytes. Remember that these are byte size, so let me shrink some of this down. Okay, then we go to memory. Then we go to process for memory. So Microsoft Management Console comes up here, DWM comes up here because that's the thing that we ran for our performance monitor, your search UI, right? I had search mechanism earlier. So there are commit, these are the allocation in memory that it uses for specific application or activity, right? You got OneDrive, Internet Explorer, or File Explorer, and so on. So if you're running more application, you would see more processes here in the memory, and also commit to more RAM storage allocation. Now, why is this important? Because if you don't have enough resources, your application will fail, right? And then we talked about application security earlier, where we also need to examine how those applications are using the resources. So for scalability and maintenance purposes, if you want to grow, you have to have prediction in how it's using your RAM, what kind of resources using, and so on. Any questions? Help? Yeah. You let it finish earlier?
Well, it's still,
Yeah, it's gonna take a few minutes.
so it should pop up when it's done.
Yeah, when it's done, just like about 5 minutes. Yeah, you don't have to stop it for anything. It's just a few minutes. So at the end, after you have gone through all the counter, all the memory information, you're gonna get into report statistic area, right? It's gonna give you the overview. And it's file information. So it's gonna give you processor speed, file path for the kernel logger, and the events it's processed. So I see all of that. Process events is here. Kernel logger name is here. So now, once we did it in the graphical user interface, we're gonna take pieces of it and we're gonna do it in PowerShell. Because what world is it if we can't use PowerShell in Windows, right? So key thing for PowerShell, before we approach this, some of you already saw this with CIS40A and 27. Syntax, critical. The way you type, make sure that we upper lowercase space, symbol, all of that is important in Windows PowerShell. It is a little bit more picky than most command line based environment. Okay. So once we're done with performance monitor and we put down all the answers and all the screenshot that we need, you can close this. And then we simply open up PowerShell and you have to use it as an administrator. So run as admin, click yes to allow the app. Did you change, did you boost, did you give it more power? Oh, okay. It shouldn't take more than a few minutes. If it's slow, it's possibly because of resources. And I hope we didn't use the infect one from the last time. Sometime, you know, malware would also slow it down too.
No.
Well, last lab that we did was malware analysis, right, for this class.
Yeah.
So if you're using the same VM, you just gotta turn on your threat defender. So go to your settings and then change that. Okay, so we're gonna do a get counter. Let me scroll up and move this down. So we're gonna run this command. So remember we recorded the percentage processor time earlier. We can run this directly onto the PowerShell. So get counter, and remember that get and whatever that's attached to the hyphen after that is gonna be a function to pull data. And we're gonna pull that from the processor counter. And it's gonna be total. We're gonna do a percentage of processor time. Oops. I'm gonna make sure there's space there. And then we're gonna do a continuous. You can also set interval on how frequent you want for it to get the counter. So when we say continuous, it's just gonna keep going until you stop it. Oh. I'm not able to see continuous. I have a space. There it goes. It didn't like my hyphen space there. So it's gonna pull and it's gonna give you the data. You see the numerical value that's changed, sometimes low, sometimes high, sometimes depending on my you know, that moment in time where that processor is executing something. Now, in order to stop this, is very similar to Linux. You just do Control-C to cancel your process. So I'm gonna hit Control-C. So I try to put the interpretation of your command here, right? We would put in the parameter for percentage processor time counter, and that will be continuous. So it's gonna keep looping that function, right, to pull the percentage processor time as it proceeds. So it's gonna report back every single time until you stop it. Take a screenshot of this. And then what we can do is we can use another command, which is known as start job, to execute the get counter command in the back. And because it is a commandlet, or it is going to execute on top of another command, right? You can wrap it inside the curly brace. So we're gonna use a counter, which is what we did on the graphical user interface, which is your logical disk. And we're gonna look at the free space because storage is important. If you're running out of storage, your logs that don't get saved, you know, your OS might suffer. So what we're gonna do is we are going to have it sample 1,000. We're gonna do a script block. Dash counter. Did it finish? Is there a pause button to see if you can pause? Or I don't know why it's slow like that. It shouldn't.
I'll shut up and pause.
Hmm? I had a pipe there. Okay, so here it tells me the ID number. This is the job. That's the script, the start job script block. And then the background job, it's gonna run under that, right? And the location is in the localhost. Now, this is used, but you don't really see your data, right? You can view your data. Says to view the performance counter output job, you're gonna do a receive job, right? So that's how you can see it, but it generated it. We'll take a screenshot of this. Next, we're gonna look at memory. So we're gonna set variable by using the $sign. And we're gonna do mem counters. So this is your variable name. And we're going to use the get counter function. And we're gonna do a list set memory. And we're gonna choose path. So once you have set your variable, then you can pass that variable, you can use that variable. Okay, so now it's stored that what was defined inside that variable. Then we're gonna do a get counter -counter. And we're gonna plug that variable in here, mem counters. So 2 separate lines. So it's able to execute that, right? And then we get it going. Maybe it's just lagging because it is a virtual machine after all.
Mine up to like 12 because the first time it crashed.
Yeah, sometimes, you know, it needs a little bit of RAM because it's actually, you know, it's software, so it's running on RAM. And your permanent storage, of course. Okay. So here we're able to use the variable to get your mem counters, right? So it shows up like individual one, transition page. Remember how we were looking at standby, right, earlier? So here you can check your RAM information, your cache information. So is the information provided the same as step 29? Close. Right? It added all the sub counter and it gives you the numerical value. There are some differences though. You do have slightly different, but mostly the same. I think at the beginning, so you have like cache fault, transition fault, write copies, commit. There things that are mostly the same. I think I checked there were like maybe a couple of items that are slightly different. But you would get the same in here and out using the graphical user interface performance monitor. Okay, for 37, we're going to use another variable called counter. And we are going to pull the processor time. So we're gonna do a get counter, and then use its property to be able to access counter sample, the first counter sample. So we define a variable with a $sign, right? Get counter dash counter. And then we're gonna have processor and a wildcard. Do a percentage processor time. I think there's no space before. We'll see. Yep. It didn't like that. There is a space. Okay, then we are going to use the variable when we access counter sample. Did I have it wrong? Samples with the S. Okay, so define the variable, then use that variable with counter sample. So it's gonna use the first sample from that list or that container, and it's gonna give you the cook value. So on that will be the instance 0, which is defined here, or it's executed there. So it uses the first element in that array. That would be this cook value. Your instance name is 0 because it's the element, right? Location. So it's the first element in that array. So 0. Your cook value is this value on the right. So that was 37. We used the counter variable and we were able to obtain the percentage for processor time. Next, we're gonna find the amount of processor time used by each processor for the system. And we are going to reset. I found that if you don't do this, even though you previously do it, it doesn't necessarily retrieve that variable. So that's why it's done again, the same. So in PowerShell, don't assume that when you set the variable like a few lines back, that it's able to use it. Sometimes it loses because it's temporarily storing that variable. So it might flush that out already by the time that you get to like the 5th line or the 3rd line. So in our case, like a couple steps later, you have to reset it. So we set the variable again, and we're going to use that variable. Whenever you see the $ in PowerShell, that's a variable. Or an identifier, I should say. Counter samples. So in the prior step, we were using the first element of the array. In this one, we are gonna do the comparison. So we're gonna do a where object. Values. That's an LT. I don't think it makes a difference with the curly brace. Make sure that this is an L, like in Larry, lowercase. Okay? For step 38, that's an L. So if it's throwing crazy red error, check what you type. And this is a different lab from last time. Last time I only did the Linux part, but. So this gives you more information, right? 0 through 3. So you have 4 instances. And then it's going to give you the total process time, which is, they're all the same for the 4 instances. So 38, don't forget, it's LT, not IT. LT. Take a screenshot. What is the processor time total value? Because they're all the same, so it is the same as the others for me. Then we're gonna do a little harder. As far as PowerShell command, we're gonna set 2 variables, and we're gonna use them to give you a sorted list of cook value. So the first variable, we're gonna use the counter variable again. Sometimes if you define it a couple lines before, it would work, like I said, but don't rely on that 100%. So if you run the command and it doesn't work, just redefine the variable and then run the next command. Missing an E. Okay, so I set the variable there, and then I'm gonna do a processor variable. Live is not copy and paste, right? So you have to type it all out, sadly. Imagine the world of everything is copy and paste. Percentage processing. Okay, so we set 2 variables. Now we're going to use it. Counter samples. And type. Sort object. Hook value. Format. Table. Pushing. Path. Instance name. Hook value. Auto size. Capital S. I'm missing property. Space. So space there, a space with the property. Let me check. Yeah, no space there. It's not. Value descending format. Precipice issue, so I must have had something this type property could value descending format table property. And instance name. Something format. It's tracking error on my part. Not able to get the table. We should be able to output this and get a screenshot. I'll fix that in a second. Okay, last part. I know that this is not very long, but you're gonna do a few Kali Linux or Linux command. Okay, it's very fast. So while that's running, I'm gonna go back and fix it in a second. We're gonna go ahead and add, and then we're gonna do Kali Linux. So I have it download, make sure that we extract it. We're gonna add the the virtual machine. You can run it as it is, or you can up it. So I'm going to give it maybe 4,000, 4 gigs, and then yeah, we'll keep it at dual core. It's okay. And then I didn't want it to deplete like, well, it should be able to handle 16 gig for 2 virtual machines. 8 each. Okay, so for Kali, we're just gonna simply run a few commands. There's top in our lecture notes. So I want you to see what that looks like. It's gonna give you the task or the subtask, so the process that's related to the task and the subprocesses. It's gonna show you the state of the processes. Similar to what you've seen with CPU information on the Windows side, you're gonna see cache, memory, and CPU. And you can always do help option and look at the man page for a certain command. So we type in top. And it would look like this. Okay. So it gives you the information on, you know, what's loaded, load average, and so on. And you would see that there's some stuff that's root, and then there's some stuff that's Kali. This is important because in the case that if you have, if there's someone that's changed access or have something running, we can see it with top. Okay. And then we need to stop it. So Control C. And then we're going to do the vstat. So VM stat. So this is a little bit more brief, but it's mostly focused on process memory, some swap IO, and system CPU. So you are going to get a lot less information if you're doing the VM stat. So that is just virtual memory, and virtual memory is a storage space that could be permanent storage space, like your SSD or your hard disk drive, that is used for memory purposes. In the case if they do page file for web or applications. So VM stat gives you virtual memory. You guys know where to find virtual memory information in Windows? It's in your system settings, right? In the properties of your system, like your computer property. There is an option where you can find it, but most of the stuff is searchable in your OS, so you can find that as well. So it's gonna give you buffer size, that's for temporary storage, and then your swap memory or swap files. Okay. So we can see that here, it doesn't look very organized compared to what you see in the last one. And then we're gonna do LSOF. So this is the list of open files. Remember how we were talking about like how we can check for files? So in Linux, we would look at LSOF for list of open files. That relates to Linux processes because your system files is used. So you can use this command. Screenshot, scroll to the beginning of the list, and then you would see the category, right? In the terminal, it might not look very clean. I'm sorry? Or were you asking me? So we would scroll up and then you would see, hold on. Yeah, they disable the tool package. Well, the tool packages work here, but there's certain things that you cannot do. Yeah, but you can do it at home. Yeah, bidirectional would allow you to do copy paste if you enable it.
Kali should.
Huh?
Kali should have it enabled by.
Yeah. You can, but the command is so short. Like it's one command, so you don't need to copy paste. Only on the Windows side, you need to copy paste. But live is not about copy paste, like I said before, right? So, all right. So look, scroll up and then you would see the column name. It's gonna tell you what information it's giving you, right? Yeah.
Can I get that has to just read the last step?
Yeah, I'm getting the same thing. I think there's issue with the format table. I tested it, I swear.
I just took a screenshot and then.
Yeah, so for if you guys get to 39 and if it's stuck there, but it's the second part after the pipe. We always run into format table issue in all my classes because I think it's this. It might be. Let me switch. Yeah. Maybe. I'm gonna remove because I recall that might be this. It's well, it's less red.
It's the path.
Yeah, it's the patch. Yeah, I did put the space and it didn't like that either, but it could just be. See? So I think it's the format table. Yeah. I'll fix that in a little bit.
Space. Space.
Yeah, because it's a parameter. This and then space and then dash property, right? Is that right? Brandon, thank you. I got it.
What happened?
It's format table space dash property.
I'll go back.
It's like that. I suspect that it has to be that property path. Thank you. He was pointing it out. It's a lot quicker for him to. Okay. And then PID stat, and then you're gonna do a PS. Okay. So PID stat. That's gonna give you your process information with identifier. It tells you that here. So you can monitor task. You can also do specifically for the user. So if you do PID stat and then dash R, I believe you can also do dash P, but so dash R and then dash U in Kali. So the username follow the dash U. And then of course, if you want to copy paste this, you can for Kali. Okay, so with this, you are going to do a PS command, which gives you the active processes. And it's gonna be for R users, S users, and F users. So it's gonna list who they are here. So there are only two, right? You have your root and you have your Kali. And then I think there's a little bit right here for the system purposes. And then it's also giving you some label information. And then we want to only pull it for the root. So you can do a -u. So PS is also going to give you process information. And also PID. PID included also died identifier, but we can pull it for specific user. So look at that, take a screenshot, look at the percentage for CPU that has the highest. So look at the value. And then we're going to do an IO stat for the system. So it's going to give you the average CPU, your percentage for the user, your system. Here's your system. And then IO wait for input and output. So this is going to give you input output device loading. And then on the next one is TCP dump. Put in your password. So this lists the interface. When you do D, capital D option is going to give you the interface to collect the packets. So F0 is the one that's up. That's the only one. That's what we're going to use. So before you start TCP dump, always list your interface and then use the one that is up and ready. And you need to be a super user, so it needs to be sudo. We're gonna do account 10 and verbose. Sorry, I had an extra T there, but it should be this. For 60 TCP dump with the -C 10 verbose. So we're gonna capture 10 packets, but in order to generate packets, you gotta open up your Firefox. So that way you can have data. Okay. And then once you open that up, you can close the tab. Otherwise, it's just gonna stay into listening mode until forever, right? You gotta generate traffic. Look at it shows AWS information. And then next last, we're gonna do a free end. So this is gonna give you memory. CPU usage, memory, IO devices, which is for systat, and then free M is for memory. Remember that when you want megabyte, you're gonna do a -M. If you want gigabyte, you're gonna do the -G. Okay, so the size in increment of 1,000 is gonna be the letter. Systat is not installed with Kali, but some other Linux you would be able to use Systat. So we're gonna do an install of Systat. You done?
Yeah, I actually got a head start on the lab, like in the beginning,
Okay.
because I usually do the working stuff, the assignments.
Oh, to fill out?
Mhm.
Oh, the assignment. Okay. But make sure we turn in all the things. And you caught up with last week?
Mhm.
Okay, all right. Trying to type and talk at the same time. Wait, Systat is not. See the app install, Systat, Systat. Let me try SAR. Yeah, so it's at the latest version, but it's our okay. So we installed it and then we're gonna use SAR, which is System Active Report. This is included with your Systat package, so you can only use that. It used to be incorporated, but I think now you have to install Systat and then give you system. So here you would see memory usage and other, so it's in kilobytes though. So the value seems larger because it's kilobytes. Then we're going to look at the running queue. So we're gonna do SAR -Q 2 and 5 and read their documentation if you want to look at other options. Okay, so we would have your queue length, number of processes, and loading average. And we're gonna do sudo IO ping. On mine today, it doesn't want to install IO ping. It says it can't locate package. And then we're gonna try to install it through the command. Maybe their Git repo is down or I'm having connected issues.
If you don't mind, can you show me the, I'll show it instead for you. I got it, there you go. I got it. Yes, thank you. You just need to update the system.
Yeah. Or I was thinking of restart. I should have done that step 1, right? Thank you. So make sure we run updates for 65.
It's all good, just upgrade, or is it different?
Update. Yeah, you just need update. Yeah. It's dependent on your release update.
Okay.
So make sure we run update for 65 before we install. And then after that, you should be able to do IO ping and then answer the rest of the question. And we did fix the Windows side with the format table. Okay. So let me stop recording.